Breaking tonight, stunning new evidence in the search for the truth about the terrorist attack in Benghazi, Libya, which led to the first assassination of a U.S. ambassador in decades, as well as the murder of 3 other Americans. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. For years, Americans have demanded to know why security was so lax at our Benghazi consulate on the 9/11 anniversary, whether our government did all it could to save those under attack that night, and whether the administration may have misled the nation about the reasons behind the assault. Now, after an exhaustive hearing featuring former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, we may be closer to answers, in particular on whether the American people were misled by an administration fighting to win a second term. It was September 11th, 2012, 56 days before the presidential election, and 11 years to the day after the worst terror attack in our nation's history. America once again came under attack, this time in a foreign city many had never heard of. But as day turned to night in Benghazi, Libya, a mob approached the U.S. consulate. At 9:40 p.m. local time, they attacked. An alarm sounded, and chaos ensued, as our own Greg Palcott reported.
The entire safe haven, which takes up part of the first floor of the main residence, is black with thick smoke and fumes. Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, and David Ubben move to a bathroom within the safe area, which has a window. They try to open it, but it doesn't help. There's just too much smoke. They drop to the floor, trying to get air, but even down there, they can't breathe. Fighting the heat and smoke, they find another window grill they can open.
This is the window that Special Agent Ubben jimmies open and crawls out of. But Stevens and Smith do not crawl out after him. And so, even though he can barely see, barely breathe, he goes back in. In fact, he goes back in and out several times. He can't find them.
Rescuers later recovered the body of Sean Smith, but they failed to locate Ambassador Chris Stevens and were forced to leave the facility under fire. Sometime after midnight, looters pulled the ambassador, unidentified at the time, from the burnout consulate. He was taken to a hospital unresponsive. At 1:45 a.m., our ambassador, Chris Stevens, was declared dead. Hours later, a new attack, this time at a nearby CIA annex. Despite pleas from the Americans in Libya back to Washington, help would never arrive. And 2 CIA operatives, Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods, later died in that assault. As news broke of the attack here at home, the Obama administration immediately and repeatedly blamed the deadly assault on protesters outraged over an anti-Mohammed video made by a filmmaker in California.
Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior along with the protest that took place at our embassy in Cairo yesterday as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet.
It was a story Mrs. Clinton repeated 2 days later, just steps away from the bodies of the dead at a ceremony stateside. The remains of Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods returned to the nation for which they died. And it was there that the families say administration officials, including Hillary Clinton, blamed the death of their loved ones on an out-of-control protest caused by that video.
She came up and shook my hand, and she made this statement to me that we will make sure that the person who made that film is arrested and prosecuted.
Obama and Hillary and Panetta and Biden and Susan all came up to me at the casket ceremony. Every one of them came up to me, gave me a big hug, and I asked them, what happened? Please tell me. And every one of them says, it was the video.
From the start, the families did not buy it. But the story was repeated to family members and to the public over and over and over again.
This was not a pre-planned, premeditated attack. That what happened initially was that it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video.
The natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists.
I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity.
The media investigated, and the story began to fall apart. It was revealed that there were no protests in Benghazi that night. And this was indeed a pre-planned terrorist attack. Mrs. Clinton's State Department was investigated repeatedly. And while it became clear that the video was not to blame, no smoking gun proving deceit was ever found. And then it emerged that Mrs. Clinton had been withholding evidence. In all of the investigations, she never turned over her own emails. Not from her time at State, not from her days dealing with Benghazi. The committee now investigating the Benghazi attack demanded those emails and her testimony. And today, for the first time, we heard Mrs. Clinton's truth, at least in the hours right after the attack. What she really believed as she told the public a video was to blame. And the truth is that what Mrs. Clinton said publicly was very different from what she claimed privately she knew. That this attack had nothing to do with the video, nor with a protest. That it was a pre-planned terrorist attack, and she said she knew it. Here is Secretary Clinton, in her own words, to the Prime Minister of Egypt, hours after the attack. We know that the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. Those are her words. And she goes on to say, based on the information we saw today, we believe the group that claimed responsibility for this was affiliated with Al-Qaeda. We've never seen that email before. So why did she tell the families and the public a different story? Today, Congressman Jim Jordan tried to get answers. Watch.
If there's no evidence for a video-inspired protest, then where'd the false narrative start? It started with you, Madam Secretary. But what troubles me more is I think you knew the truth. I want to show you a few things here. Within 24 hours, you had a conversation with the Egyptian Prime Minister. You told him this: we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. Let me read that one more time. We know, not we think, not it might be, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. State Department experts knew the truth. You knew the truth, but that's not what the American people got. And again, the American people want to know why.
Well, I think if you look at the statement that I made, I clearly said that it was an attack, and I also said that there were some who tried to justify it on the basis of the video, Congressman. And I think
but real quick, calling it an attack is like saying the sky's blue. Of course, it was an attack.
Well,
we want to know the truth.
In